Hello and welcome to Skeindeer Knits. My name is Ellie and I am a Norwegian living and knitting in London. And you can follow me on Instagram under the name Skeindeer, and you can find me as a designer on Ravelry under Skeindeer Knits. But more importantly, do join the Ravelry group Skeindeer Knits, which is the best place to take part in knit-alongs and discussions and giveaways and get pattern support. It is generally the best place to get in touch and take part in this community. Welcome if you are a new viewer. This is a kind of a talk show, a one-woman talk show from my very own room here in East London, where I chat about knitting. It's not a tutorial or a class or anything, it's just like sharing the inspiration. And welcome back to those of you who have returned to watch this podcast. Thank you so much for coming back. I am just going to quickly run through the usual admin. I am running 2 knit-alongs at the moment. It is the Skeindeer sock-along, where any of my sock patterns are eligible, and we will be knitting that until the end of, I'm thinking end of August. Let's say end of August. It's been going on for a while, but I figured sock knitting is good for summer knitting, so, and it's summer, half of the world, so yeah. And that's one knit-along. You just have to knit at least one of my own sock designs. It doesn't have to be from the Sock Leicester collection that spurred this knit-along, but you can do that. They are the quickest ones. But you could also knit any of my other sock patterns, which I will get back to. But before that, I am also running the year-long knit-along, where we aim to make 6 pairs of colorwork mittens for the duration of 2018. I've been on a bit of a pattern releasing kick lately, so I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you all so much for your huge support for these mitts. These are my Tits That Collective mitts. I call them, if I want exposure, I will knit mitts for my tits. And yeah, they are representing a lot more than what they just appear to be, you know. Saying no, being good mitts for stroppy stubborn ladies such as myself, but also actually making a statement to any of the nonsense that as women folk have to put up with. Any of the stuff, be it the small stuff to the big stuff, you know what I mean. I got into more of that in my pattern page on my Instagram post and that kind of thing. So I just want to thank you all so much for your support. 20% of the revenue for these mittens are being sent to charity. I'm going to go over all of that by the end of the month, which is kind of where this project comes to an end. This project being one led by Countess Ablaze, so you can read or hear more about that on her social media. So there's that. But yeah, more on that in the past episode. I just wanted to thank you all so much yet again. It was such a roller coaster, the whole thing, from just knitting and designing these, not in that order, in just a matter of days, to having it all finished up, getting out to you guys, doing the photo shoot. So yeah, I'm kind of lost for words, so thanks. Moving on. I said I was on a bit of a pattern releasing kick. The reason being is that I am releasing a pattern right now as we speak. I was in Greece. I was in a knitting retreat in Rhodes, and there were some fibre makers there, and one of which was Liz. She's a yarn dyer from Greece, and so Liz was selling her yarn there, and I had to get them because some colours just spoke my name. And I've had some vague plans of designing a bunch of sock patterns, and this is the first of them. These are my Greek socks. I call them my Meandros socks because of the pattern used. It's called Meandros. It just seemed appropriate. Why make it more complicated than it needs to be? So as you can see, it's using hand-dyed yarns. There is some speckling happening here and there. I really love it. It's just, oh, I had so much fun when I could see the little speckles pop into the green colour here. Also seeing the beige colour in the background change. Very enjoyable. Also the entire like colour work stuff, it just worked out like nobody's business. Like, yeah, you kind of have to keep half an eye on your chart, but it's sort of intuitive as well, because if you have done one repeat, you sort of know which kind of stitch counts you will return to again. Plus I've also wrote that into the chart. This was actually an idea I got from Nathan, who's Sockmatician, who was also on this knitting retreat in Greece, that you can actually write in the chart how many consecutive stitches that will be in the same color, and given that in this pattern there are often quite many, sometimes quite few, anything from 3 up to 13, so in those cases it can be quite good to just write that in the first stitch in that color to say knit 13. Also, if you are worried about the floats, you can just knit the leg in a little bit of a larger needle size than the foot. That's not going to show. I do that a lot of the time just to make sure it goes over my heel, but usually that's all right. And yeah, these are my meandro socks. And what's more exciting, and I found out this just before starting recording now actually, I hadn't even asked her, but Liz is making kits for these, so I don't know exactly when they're coming up, probably this weekend, so keep your eyes peeled on her, say, Instagram or her webpage, her shop. These will have a 50 gram each of each color. I used about 40 something grams for each, usually closer to 40 than 50, so that should be perfectly safe. And very, very happy to have this out there, and so excited that Liz decided to do a kit for these. So the pattern you can get on Ravelry. I have a little early bird code for it because guys who buy the pattern early are like the most helpful people around. So yeah, I want to talk about the cuff. I am so proud of the cuff. I was just gonna knit a regular rib here, but as I knitted up to here I was like actually really happy with the leg length. What about folded hem? Because if I sew it here, actually that will fit with the pattern as well, because there is a change of pattern up here, and I did, and it's so nice. If I may toot my own horn, I don't know if I may. I'm just holding them up now. I don't know if there's any like techniques you're interested to know. They are toe up, and I will say they are a very, very toe up beginner friendly pattern, even though the color work, yes, I did say that, because the toe is pure stockinette. That's no different. It is no different than a vanilla sock, this part, right? So that's usually the main hurdle with toe up socks, is just doing the toe, and yeah, you can do that without any finagling with the other color, which you introduce here. And at that point it's really no different to a cuff down in terms of the difficulties with handling two strands. So then you just knit, 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 and then you increase rather than decrease for a bit of a gusset here. And this heel is my favorite toe up heel. It's so much easier than the cuff down heel flap and gusset by far. You just work up half a short row heel here and do a heel flap with knit two togethers and SSKs here. I'm telling you, piece of cake. I think I'm gonna stop rambling about these now. I just had such an enjoyment knitting these. I decided not to show you them as I was knitting on them because I quite frankly thought they'd come out really, really soon after the grease strip. But then other knitting things and life things came up in the way, so second sock syndrome. But they are out now, and they were so quick. As soon as I got the second sock on the needle, it was just as quick, if not quicker, to finish as the first one. So this has definitely inspired me to come up with more sock designs of this kind, because it was just so much fun. I casually placed that between my little sheep pals. Isn't this cute? So I am now done tooting my own horn for a bit, and I'm now going to talk about some other people's designs that I have been working on. I have put a bit of a dent into Hodgins Joy. We're not going to be seeing this cardigan that much in the future until the release of the pattern. So just to give you a bit of a background, I am knitting this for the Fibre Company. It's a Sarah Hatton design, and it's part of a collection that will be released along with the yarn Lore. That is a new Fibre Company yarn that is so scrumptious. I love it. It's very tweedy and I was gonna say earthy, but that's actually the name of this colorway, and oh, I love it. It's like a strong shelter, you know, a strong, very, very strong shelter. Oh, I love it. So I am taking part as a beta knitter, kind of like a test knitter or sample knitter, but I get to keep it, but I got yarn support, very nice. So here's one sleeve. It's gotten longer than last time, whether you can see it or not, and this is the other, which has been both knitted and frogged a little bit, but I'm almost up to the final increase, and then it's just zooming through in the established pattern, which is also quite memorizable and lovely looking. I thought this was going to be some kind of advanced cable or lace, but it's just slipping some stitches and having the yarn hanging in the front and then tucking it, as they say. So that is all I am going to say about that design for the time being, but I will say that in this Slack group that we are all part of doing this beta knit, I have seen the other beta knitters post photos of their final knit, and oh my days, this is going to be such a gorgeous collection. I initially, like, that cardigan was all I could see myself knitting from the collection, but now that I'm actually seeing the beta knitters photos, their projects, there is so much there I would love to make. Oh. Another project that has occupied a lot of my time this week is a cardigan that I am designing for Nina Petrina. I said I was done tooting my own horn. Apparently I am not. So I was so excited to be chosen for one of the designs for Nina Petrina, who's a Norwegian dyer, future collection of patterns made in her gradient kits. So Nina Petrina makes lovely ecological, organic Norwegian hand-dyed yarns. So this is some of her yarn, just casually placed in the background. This is on Hillesvåg's Viljebeis. It's a Norwegian lambswool base. It is so lovely. It's fingering weight, woolen spun, very lofty, perfect for color work, and I got to work with an entire kit to make this design, and I am so excited to show you, because in 1 week, you remember last episode, at the very end of that episode, I said I'm going to cast on this project now, and in 1 week I have done the entire freaking the entire thing, minus the arms. Or the sleeves. It's called sleeves, Ellie. I'm a designer, I promise. So there we have it. I don't know, is it? Yeah, okay, that'll do. And a bit of a background story. This week has been blazing hot. Yes, I live in Britain and I will talk about the weather. We've had a 2 to 3 week long heat wave, and this is the 3rd heat wave this year. I'm not saying this summer because the first one started in April, then we had another one in May, and then we had one from June to July. And I don't think it's over actually. I think we just got 1 day's worth of break, and I am totally using it for what it's worth to record 1 episode. It's been so lovely today. It's not like much above 20 degrees. I'm like, this is bliss. This is bliss, because my room has definitely been over 40 degrees some of the days, because it's south facing. And I've had this beast on my lap for the entirety of that time. So let me tell you a little bit about the construction here. It is a top down cardigan. You knit some rib flat, you join in the round with a steek, and the steek and the whole thing's worked down while working a gradient both in the yoke and in the main color. It actually changes color here as well, but it's very subtle, so that we have enough of this lightest color to work the entire contrast color for the body and eventually the sleeves. And I'm pretty confident I have enough, so that's good, because that means for the most common sizes the kit that I got to use will be enough, and that's, you know, convenient for both buyers and dyers. And the trees, they just look so lovely, and it's got a bit of a trick to avoid long floats that I have recently learned, so that is just brilliant. But the other thing that isn't so brilliant is that I have button bands now, and none of them have buttonholes. I am so daft. I don't know how this happened. Well, I know how it happened. I knitted the first one, and as I was knitting the second one, I was like, it was the first one that was supposed to have buttonholes. I mean, I could just go beyond the gender norms and do them on the other side the way men have it, but that's not what it's going to say in the pattern, and this will be the photograph sample. Plus it will annoy me when I am like buttoning up myself and I'm like having to do it with the other hand. No, it's gotta go. So I am now trying to find a clever way to put in buttonholes where they need to be, though chances are I'm just gonna have to throw it back, make the buttonholes and knit it all the way again, which is fine. It's fine, whatever. So yeah, I am just left with the sleeves. There's not really much exciting happening there. It's the same as the body minus the trees. And there we have it. I call this pattern Skumring, which means either twilight or dawn. One of the two, maybe both. It's when it goes from either light to dark or dark to light. Does it really matter? They look the same to me. That is what it's called, and really like it. This is what it looks like from the back. Not much different really. Just this what it is. I just can't believe I've done this in a week. I really can't. Well, I sort of can, because I'm a massive procrastinator, and there's something about this sort of lice pattern here. So this is the lice pattern, in case you didn't know. It's a dotted pattern that is often found in Norwegian cardigans. It is so addictive. It's essentially the same as the self-striping effect, because it just happens every fourth row, every fourth stitch, and so you just go, oh, I'm just gonna get to the next one. And it's just gonna knit 3 rounds, get to the next one, do another, oh, you keep going, you keep going. And with these blocks as well, you're just gonna finish one block, and then suddenly you finish the next block, and then it's not really that much left. Off I went. It does also have some subtle waist shaping, as you can see here. It goes quite gradually down from the underarm down to the waist, and so sharper out here, just so that you have the stitch count that you need to be divisible by the number of stitches that the tree chart is on. I thought about everything. My brain is fried, but this has been such an experience to test knit, to design whilst running a test knit, because people have been given continuous updates of me changing the pattern as I am knitting it, because there's no way that I would have time to knit it first and then write it and then send it, because then my test knitters would have had less time. So it's all a bit of a stressful one, but not in a bad way. I have enjoyed this, and I hope my test knitters have too. Gonna put it away now, but yeah, you will be seeing more of this as the pattern comes out. My test knitters have been given strict instructions from the above to not by me, but the people doing this collection, that they can't share anything. So all of that will come out as this collection comes out. That is when they are allowed to share their versions, their color choices and yarn choices. So stay tuned for that. But until then, you just get to see my little teasers of this every so often. And I am thinking that I need to knit more, or I should say design more cardigans, especially with lice patterns, because I just zoom through them and I could get so many of them done, and I am so inspired to do so many, and I want to have a wardrobe full of them. So it's a thing that will happen in the future. Have no doubt there will be more lice cardigans from the Skeindeer. We're in third person now, that's how important I am. And for anyone who's curious, yes, this pattern will be available in Norwegian. It will be, I think, available even in print in Norwegian, but I do believe there will be a digital version, downloadable, purchasable in English. So it should be available for everyone right away. That makes me very excited as well. And I think the tentative release is September. I just know that I have to finish this and send it off to Norway by the 10th of August, so that they have time to photograph it by the end of August. And from there on, it's pretty chop until it comes out. So that's a thing. In the end, I just want to say how honoured I am to be part of this. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and you can just tell how relieved I am now that I've gotten through that much of that piece well before the deadline. So I'm not too concerned that that's not going to be finished. And that is not the last thing I've been working on, because as I finished the body of that cardigan, I thought I need a little bit of a palette cleanser, and it's not like I have 20 whips to choose from. I needed to cast on something. I had no business casting this thing on, but I just felt inspired. It was so hot, I thought once the temperature goes to a slightly modest level, such as today, I would actually love to have a more summery top. And everyone and their dog seems to be knitting themselves a Tegna, so I can't be any worse. So I've already done the lace. I literally just finished the lace this morning, and this is it. Everyone raise their hands if you're shocked by the color choice. I am hilarious. So it is a lovely lace pattern, very kind of zoom through kind of lace, because yes, it is not fast, it's a boxy sweater, but every row is different to some extent, so you can always keep going. And then there were some break rounds, and yeah, I am done. and from here on it's just all stockinette. Now, pure stockinette is inviting to some extent when I am with people, but in other cases I don't know if it's something I will be picking up much when I'm at home, but I have some knit nights coming up, so I will bring it to that and have my brain available for conversations and stuff like that. So that is pretty cool. And I also don't think I'm going to be bringing the Skumring cardigan around, because it will require me bringing each and every cake, because the sleeve, well, each section is quite short and it will use the lightest contrast color. I will still need a bit of the main color from the yoke to just stripe it into the next main color, and then there are another 2 main colors coming up, plus the rib if I may even have missed some. So I'd essentially have to bring each and every yarn, and I think that's best to do at home, you know. It's going to be a lot of yarn tangling to do out. I am selling this pattern but I'm really enjoying it. It's something about the sections of the different colors and the lice pattern and everything that just, and there's that little nugget, the little incentive to come to the trees in the end of the body and get to finish those, and then you just have the rib left, and there was just something coming up every time. You're never really left on, I don't know, stockinette island, lice island, what have you. It has constant interest, which I hadn't planned for, but it was something I definitely experienced as I was knitting it. I don't know why I'm still talking about that thing. I was supposed to talk about Tegna. Tegna's nice. I am really enjoying this knit. I have to say I am a little bit fussed about the lace chart, because there are some mirrored decreases, like knit 4 together, but then the mirrored knit decrease 3 doesn't really match, and so I'm having to do a little bit of finagling to make them match a little bit better, to mirror each other more, because I am just a little bit hung up on those kinds of things. I mean, you don't really need to do that much to just slip a stitch knitwise or purlwise to make it perfectly match. It's kind of mirrored partner, if that makes sense. So I have done some of that, but I'm not sure if I've done it perfectly well, but at least it looks nice, you know. It really looks like mirrored on each side, and I'm not sure anyone will notice because this is a fairly dark yarn. And yeah, speaking of the yarn, I am using a 1 cake skein sweater quantity that is the size of my face. Yeah. So this is Wollmeise lace. I've had it in my stash for a very long time. It's one of my oldest stash items. I believe I bought it at the earliest podcast days, and we all know how much my stash grew since then. So it's nice to kind of dig to the very beginning of your stash, which, you know, you can do if you register your stash up on your Rauwerk page and then sort it from newest to oldest, and you find your oldest, and this is one of them. And it seems to work out pretty well with some modifications. I am knitting it tighter than recommended, so I'm doing a larger size than I'd probably need, which is why I have more than 400 stitches. At least I did at some point. I don't actually know what gauge I'm knitting at. I didn't swatch. Not something I will recommend, but I just know that if I had knitted this with a 4mm, I would have gotten gauge, if not a little bit looser, because I did that with the same yarn in a different project. And I know that had I gone down to maybe quarter needle size smaller than that, I'd probably get gauge for this pattern. So I went a quarter needle size under that again, which is why I'm working on a 3.5, which is still more than the pattern recommends, but I believe, knowing myself and my tension, that that will make it a tad bit tighter than recommended, which is good, because I think a 22 stitch gauge is far too loose for lace weight yarn, although I'd argue that Wollmeise lace is more than, it's more like a light fingering weight. But even then, I think a 22 stitch gauge is far too loose for a superwash fingering weight yarn. I see it used a lot lately and people seem to be into it, but I personally am not. I just think that is more for sport to DK weight yarn when it's superwash treated. For woolen spun non-superwash, I might be more inclined for a 22 stitch gauge. Probably not color work, but for a loose stockinette sweater, I'd probably do that. But generally I I'd go for DK weight if I wanted that kind of gauge. So I'm hoping this is going to be more of a 24 to 26 gauge, but I don't really care either way, because this entire thing is going to be my swatch. It will either be a lot bigger than it needs to be, or just a bit bigger than my measurements, because it's a positive ease boxy thing anyway. So it will either be very boxy or a little bit boxy. Either way, I'm happy, and I will find out what my gauge is in due time, and then I can make decisions about what to do for the sleeves and sleeve holes and that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know if I can recommend taking this approach, because you usually should swatch and plan out your garment and know that you are getting gauge, or what adjustments you need to do to get gauge. But when it's a boxy garment, it just matters less, and I do have a fairly good idea of what I am getting. I just don't know exactly the figure. And that's kind of fun too, you know, just winging it a little bit. It totally depends on your project, I think, if it's suitable for winging it. But I'm always a proponent for winging it anyway. And we are done with this week's knitting. That was not just a little bit, was it? I mean, yeah, I should have spent that time better. But what better to spend time on than knitting? Anyway, I also have a bit of a naughty week in terms of acquisitions. This is a lot like it was, I don't know, a couple of months ago, when I had like tons of knitting done every time, and I had bought a ridiculous amount because I kept going to yarn events in other countries and things like that. This week I don't really have that excuse. I haven't been in the best of moods, and I like to think I'm not the kind of person that will like shop away my feelings, but there is a pattern emerging. There is a bit of a pattern emerging, and I have bought a book. It's right here. Guys, it is Stitching Time Volume 1, because I have already Volume 2, and I have the amazing Shetland Project book. Is that what it's called? The Vintage Shetland Project. So I had to complete my collection and get the first issue, and it's really amazing. So I am glad I have now caught them all three of them. Same nice, lovely red back thing. There's a word for this. Let's go through some patterns. I mean, there are stuff in here that I'm just never going to knit myself, which is fine, because that is one of my favorite things about this book, is that it's for 20s to late 40s vintage patterns, and you get what you've asked for. It's not going to be, oh, this is a 40s pattern that could kind of work today. No, it's a 40s pattern for what the 40s were, or what the 20s were, or the 30s were. It's not pretending to be anything else. It's not trying to make it into what is 2018 fashion and seeing like what was the common ground and just including that. Obviously not 2018, this book is older, but you know what I mean. It is very representative of the time that it's supposed to represent. But that's not to say that there isn't stuff here that you can find that you would like to make today. I mean, look at this cardigan. I would totally make that. Oh, and this sweater is legendary. I mean, I want to make that. Just saying, just putting that out there. I also think this top is really lovely. Again, it's a color we all know I'm quite drawn to, but I also like that silhouette a lot. I'm also really drawn to these kinds of lace tops. I have a few mentally planned, and I have some appropriate stash for it, and I just really like it. Again with the burgundy, I mean, I probably would omit the little bow tie thingy, not whatever, but in general, I love that top. This, again, that would totally fit my style. So there's a lot of stuff in here that goes in the very, very distant knitting queue, where I feel like investing in something quite involved, because again, it's a true representation of vintage knitting patterns, and this is a total honest reflection of that. It also kind of speaks a bit to me personally, because being Norwegian, that is also how we write our old traditional knitting patterns, because it's a fairly cold country and people have usually combated that by wearing knitwear, and so that knitwear has traditionally been knit quite tight. It's a point that actually Amelia of Arctic Knitting has made lately that I totally agree with. Kind of DK to worsted weight yarns that we have that are today usually recommended for a 22 stitch gauge would back then be recommended for at least the 24 stitch gauge, if not even tighter. Like Peer Gynt, which is bordering worsted weight, arguably DK, I would say, was knitted up into a kind of a sport weight to fingering weight gauge. because they would just knit really tight to keep the cold out, and the garments could often stand up on their own. In this case, obviously being a vintage knitting book, it uses a lot of finer yarns and knitting them quite tight, and even when using thicker yarns they're knitted quite tight, and you will get some very durable garments, especially given the lovely Excelana yarn that Susan Crawford has, because it includes a lot of long staple yarns as well, and that has even more durability. So that was my little book talk. Haven't looked through it in depth, which, you know, I never really get around to before recording, but in general I have a very good impression of this book, as much as the other books. They keep getting better and better, but the first one is still pretty good. So I am very excited that I bought that, and now very anxious to make it fit into my bookcase that is way full of books already. So I talked about the Titsag collective earlier this episode, and I wasn't gonna buy anything for it. You know, Countess of Blaze, she put up this gallery view where each maker is equal, there's no branding, you just click on the stuff that you like the look of, and you may or may not buy it. And I wasn't gonna buy anything. I am a level-headed, non-shopping knitter that has plenty of stash and knows not to buy anything. So I bought stuff. I am expecting some of it to come my way already, so Nomadic yarns and Stranded Dyeworks yarn will be coming to me later, but I did get some FabFunky Fibres self-striping tits out yarn in the colours. Yes, I also got self-striping yarn from Nomadic Yarns in the same colours. I totally need that. Yeah, so I mean, this just looks outrageously colourful and bright, and I can't wait to knit this up into a pair of socks, but I'm probably gonna have to, because the whip overload is real. So there we have it. I love the look of the label. It's highlighting the fact that this is given to cancer research. It's a 75% merino, 25% nylon. It's got 464 yards, that's 425 meters. I love that the meter ratio sock yarns lately have gone up quite a bit. Yeah, I like that. It also encourages us to knit them tighter, which makes them more sturdy, and just makes me happy. So that was one cheeky little purchase that arrived with me very quickly and got me a lot of instant gratification. The other yarn that I have not taken out of its crinkly bag is Norah George yarns. So there is that. I just thought this was lovely and so subtle, yet using the colours from this whole project. And this is going to become some sort of delicate socks at some point. It uses, again, 75% super merino, 25% nylon, and it's got 425 meters. I don't think it's the same base as the other one, because the other one looked a little bit more high twist. But I don't mind either way. I think it will be lovely. And I also really like that the sock bases I see nowadays have as much as 25% nylon, which I think, especially if you're going to have merino in the sock yarn, which is quite a short staple, makes it a little bit more frail, then having that much nylon, I would say, is pretty good. With the caveat, of course, that nylon isn't the best for the environment, but you can sort of trade it off with the durability of the socks, so they will last longer, and it's just a personal decision. I just thought it was worth mentioning. So very happy to have enough yarn to make at least 2 pairs of socks. Now, I would have been very proud if I could say that it stopped there. I just, you know, bought a book, ordered some special occasion yarns, and yeah, no, it happens to have been Isolde Teague's birthday, and in relation to that, she did a birthday sale in her shop, and she has one of my favorite yarn shops, not just because she is the only UK stockist of Roma yarn. More on that in the Norwegian Knitting and Helpdesk thread in my Ravelry group if you're curious, but it's one of my favorite Norwegian yarns that I usually, up until she stocked it, could only get in Norway or from the States, and so it's finally available there, and that was kind of how I became aware of that shop. But it turns out to have lots of stuff that I love, be it the books that she sells to the other yarns and her own patterns, of course, and notions and stuffs and things. It's just a really good online yarn shops, and shipment is always really prompt, and I have often received my yarn the day after. In this case it took a little bit longer, but no wonder. I mean, someone's been celebrating their birthday, so hey, I'm not grumpy. But I have the yarn now and I can show you, and I'm very excited. Like I needed 2 new sweater quantities. As if that was the thing that my stash was screaming for. But you know, you gotta keep the other sweater quantities in good company. So I got 7 balls of Ulysse by the Rerum Natura. All pronunciations out the window. It's a lovely French non-superwash merino, and again I would just throw out all expectations to what merino is out the window, and just this is quite rustic. I kind of become a bit allergic to the word rustic, although I used it a lot because rustic doesn't really mean anything, but we sort of seem to have a shared understanding of what it means anyway, and I guess this fits the bill. It is woolly, it is more of a matte finish than a glossy finish, which, you know, superwash yarns often have. This is just very, it feels very natural. Again, a word that doesn't mean anything because everything's natural pretty much. And yeah, the color, I mean, mustard yellow, I just love mustard yellow. It's called Dore, D-O-R-E. What else can we learn about this? It's got 185 meters per 50 grams, but it's really, it looks a lot thicker than that would suggest. And I am planning on knitting this up on a, I want to say 22 stitch gauge. Was it 20? I hope to make the lovely, beautiful Kornblomst cardigan by Lille Dille because it is so gorgeous. And I want it in mustard yellow, but will I have time? Probably not. But I hope to make it. I really, really do. So at least now I have the yarn for it whenever it will happen. Although in most cases when I get yarn for something I end up making something entirely different. Especially with sweater quantities. But it's good to have a plan. I never buy sweater quantities without some kind of plan. So yeah, oh, it's just so lovely. I'm going to give you a bit of a close-up to give you an idea because I'm not the best at coming up with the most kind of descriptive words for yarn, but it's so lovely. I'm in love with it. I have already done a cardigan in their Gilead yarn, which is kind of the same yarn but more of a DK2 worsted weight. I think I knitted it up into more of an Aran gauge because it's just that open when it comes to gauge, this yarn. I can knit this from probably anything between 30 to 20 stitch gauge, probably even broader than that if you include shawls, and I don't know, it's really quite flexible. So I'm just keeping it in this bag, but you get the idea. It's a bit of a load. And the other sweater quantity, I got something I have been lusting for a very, very, very long time. This is something I have tried to pronounce many times in my private life and it's not happening. I'm not doing that in public because I think I can do German pronunciation right, but for some reason this word keeps failing me. I just can't. So Rauwerk, we're gonna say it in English. Just leave any attempts at trying to say it in German, but this is their name. I love these guys, this yarn so much. This is the Obsidian colorway and it's from Bavaria, and I just it's actually from Munich in Bavaria, and it just makes me think that I should have gone to Bavaria ages ago. I have 3 very lovely friends who are all from Bavaria, and I always said that I was going to visit them when they moved back there after having lived in London, and I haven't yet, and I want to see them. Some of them live in Ingolstadt and some live in Ulm, and one has moved to Klagenfurt in Austria, but I think 2 of them are from Munich, maybe München, sorry. They're around there, and so I really want to go there and maybe just maybe pop by the Wollmeise shop, you know, it's not too far away, and I might just go look for more of this yarn as well if I can find it nearby, because Bavarian wool, you guys. So yeah, this is 100% merino wool, and again I would advise you to just forget everything you think you know about merino, because this is an entirely different beast. I mean, I've had a soft spot for German merino for a very long time. I've had multiple lovely people send me German merino that is non-superwash, and it's been such a lovely squish feel experience every time. There is I suspect there might be a related merino breed that they use in France that the Rerum Natura uses, because I'm getting a lot of the same sensations here. It is arguably a little bit harder than the Rerum Natura, So if you are between the two yarns, then maybe aim for the softer if that's what you want. But I still think this is so lovely, and the stitch definition I think this yarn will produce. I think this would be amazing for cables. I would love to have a go at a pattern made for, say, shelter in this yarn. I think that would be so good. And I probably do have enough yarn, although cables do tend to eat a lot of yarn, so I don't know. But I thought I'd make was perhaps the Veronica cardigan shrug bolero thingy. It's not bolero, it's just like a throwover thing. But I have some other yarns in mind for that as well, so I have several yarns in mind for that, and I don't even know how wearable that is in the first place. So if you have done the Veronica, do let me know how you felt that is. How much do you wear it? When do you use it? Do you use it? Was it worth making? Because I'm really intrigued by it. It's just such a different type of garment, and I would like to have it, and I think this yarn for that would be so good. So a bit of a yarn spec rundown. It is a 2-ply woolen spun yarn. I love it. I am fangirling so much over these. No matter what I end up making with them, I'm sure I'm going to love it. As I was saying, this is a 100-gram skein. 220. It has 220 meters. Recommended gauge of about 22 stitches. See, DK weight is for 22 stitches. And yeah, recommends a needle size of about 3.5 to 4.5, which sounds perfect for me. Fangirling. I think I'm gonna have to wrap this up, but I hope there will be some time to cast this on, because I just want to squish. I remember that was one of my regret yarns from Edinburgh, because the Isolde booth was selling this yarn there, and I was going back to it all the time. I was like, I want this, but I don't know what I would make, you know. But as soon as I thought of the Veronica, that means I am allowed to buy it, because those are the rules that I live by when it comes to yarn shopping. If I have the faintest idea of what I could do with it, I know how much to get, and then I'm allowed to buy it. There are some like slippery slopes, loopholes in that rule, and I find them whenever I can. So that is pretty much all I have knitting wise for this episode. So I am not gonna really share much more about yarn or knitting now. I'm just gonna ramble a bit. That's kind of how I like to end my episodes. So those of you who are not for that, you don't have to stick around. So I usually record in the morning, around like 10 o'clock in the morning maybe, because that's when my flatmates are out and it's all ready to go. Now it's closer to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. One, it was because I was just lazy and gross in the morning, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna be clever. I'm gonna be clever and avoid all that noise that I complain about every time. So I'm gonna avoid the leaf blower and the construction workers on the council estate across the road. I'm gonna avoid the garbage truck, and I'm gonna avoid just all the stuff that's happening here at that time. And be clever. How do you think that went? When I'm about ready to start recording, I hear this insane noise. It sounds like a war zone. I'm sorry if that's an upsetting description to some, but that was what it sounded like. And no wonder, because I look out my window. First I can't see anything, but then I see these, they look like spaceships. It was like seeing Star Wars but in the sky above London, and I managed to film some. I'm just gonna put that in here. It was mad. It's probably for some kind of event that I probably should have known about. That's probably everyone in London knows about. But this was happening right over the roof of my house. I swear if I was like standing on the roof and I reached up, I could probably like stroke the flights on their belly. It wasn't that close, but it kind of felt like it was that close. I've never seen flights in that, or planes I should say, in that high resolution whilst being on the ground and them being in the sky. Yeah. So that was something. I'm glad I managed to get some of it on video and show you just how close that was to my house. Must have been for some kind of special occasion, but fun to see. A little bit annoying that I got away from my podcasting recording time, but I can sort of see that they didn't make those priorities. I'm not that full of myself. So after having been unexpectedly disrupted by that, I thought, okay, we're good, we're ready, gonna sit down and record. And then the garbage truck comes, and then my flatmate comes home, And I actually had to ask her, you know, are you gonna be here for long, because there's no way I can record when you're here, and you know I do this weird knitting thing. I know it's odd, but if you're gonna be out, she was reassuring me that she wasn't gonna stay, and I was like, sorry for throwing you out. I'm a great flatmate. So that's my life, that's how that's happening. In other news, I am planning on going to Bergen Knitting Festival, if I haven't said that already. I will be talking more about that soon. I might do that in the next episode, but if you have any questions about the festival at all, I'd be happy to help answering that. So you can put that, well, preferably in the questions and answers thread on Rauwerk, but if you insist, I suppose it could work down in the comment section. There's just a small risk that I may miss it in time for the actual recording, but yeah. So that is up to you. I am also going to Oslo fairly soon. I have bought a ticket for the 10th of August, but I don't really know what I'm gonna do or when I am gonna go back here again. I haven't really planned anything. My brain has been so fried lately. And I totally and completely blame the heat wave. And yes, it's been a serious heat wave. It's been so hot. I feel like I haven't been wearing proper clothes for a long time. I was just like very loose fitting tank tops and dresses. That makes me feel like I'm kind of naked. Today I was finally able to put on layers and I am so happy. So fingers crossed that Oslo is going to be its usual cold self when I arrive there. Another thing I have wanted to talk about on the podcast is this issue of gatekeeping in knitting. I thought I'd make some room and time to talk about it today, but I'm sort of at loss for words. I'm not sure quite what to say about it, so I'm probably gonna leave that for the future episode, and again give you an opportunity to put in your questions in the questions and answers thread on Ravelry so that I don't miss them, because I think this is experiences that maybe I don't have myself. And so I want to explain what I mean about gatekeeping. Sometimes it's necessary in certain discourses. I just don't see it necessary in knitting, because all knitting is valid. And what gatekeeping is in knitting, as far as I understand it, is this almost expectation or demand by some that you should be knitting certain things with certain tools, with certain yarns, with patterns from certain designers or certain sources, and that if you use certain yarns or needle types or whatever, then you are not welcome. And obviously I am against that. It's a matter of principle. All knitting is valid, every knitter is welcome, and it really upsets me to know that some people experience that kind of behavior. And I want to know if any of you have, what your thoughts are about it. If you haven't experienced it, but maybe any thoughts or opinions or questions about this is completely valid, and I would love to hear your experiences. You can also put them in the YouTube section below. It's just more likely that I would answer questions in the Ravelry thread is what I'm trying to say. I personally don't really experience that other people are shaming me about my knitting. I'm very firm about what I like and knit what I like, and don't really think about how other people are going to see it and feel about it and what they say about it or whatever. So I am sort of a little bit like in a world where this doesn't exist. But it really upsets me to know that this is something that people are made to feel, that what they do isn't valid and they're not making good enough stuff to partake in the knitting discourse we have here. So yeah, let's talk about that. I welcome you all to put in your input about that, so we can reflect upon it, because I don't know what to say other than rage, and that's probably not gonna make any sense. So I think I'm gonna wrap this up here. I want to remind you, of course, that I have a sock pattern, that one, available on Ravelry for purchase if you want to buy it or support me or gift it to someone or whatever. It's up to you. I'm not policing that. And I of course want to thank everyone again for having been so supportive lately. There's been a lot of interesting chatter going on social media that I've had a lot of people giving me the thumbs up for, and thanking me, and I've thanked you guys, and it's been quite lovely, and I felt a bit more real. I felt a bit more honest in this world, and so it's all been quite interesting. I think I'm just gonna draw the line there and wrap up this podcast, which is not my forte, because I can just go on a new little train of thought and we can just sit here forever. So let's not do that, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.